I'm very glad to be here. I love doing live events where I come out of my bunker and brave the elements of potential coronavirus. I just had to cancel my Europe work. I was going to go teach in the Netherlands. I was going to go teach in Romania. Michael Bolton he's in Denmark right now. He said everything's closing down. He just taught a class and said now everyone's being told they have to work from home. So I taught here on the last day that anyone would come into the office. Is really getting kind of scary. But from a tester's point of view, it's kind of exciting times. It's a great day to be someone who is justified in his worries and concerns. Thank you very much. Now people need us. What's going to happen, James? You think like a tester. I'll tell you, the dark times are coming, and not too soon. It's a little depressing, but my wife's very happy that I'm coming home in the next couple of days. Talk about meta testing. Meta testing is going to drive me nuts. Meta testing, okay? What skilled testers are turning into, because testing as a field is going through some big time challenges these days with DevOps. I've identified the problem. Okay, the problem is all these young people coming in. There, that's it. Full stop. They don't know the lessons that we learned in 1995. 1997, 1999, 2003, 2005, 2008, all those lessons. I did a talk in 1999 called Next 10 Years at the test. And I said, the problem is that people keep learning the lessons of testing, and then they go, oh, interesting. And then they go off and do something else for a living. And they're only in testing for a few years. It's kind of like, how do you keep things on a top-notch professional level when everyone is a meerkat who lives 10 years and then dies? It's really hard to pass on to the generations, and the generations all the accumulated wisdom. So that means that the new people come in and they go like, do we really need testing? You know, I'm just thinking outside the box here, but does anyone care about any of this stuff? No? Well, let's just not do it. Wow, am I the first one ever to think this thought? I'm the smartest 22-year-old ever. By the way, I joined Apple Computer at the age of 20. I was the youngest test manager. Well, I was the youngest manager in the R&D group at Apple Computer, and they hired me to be a test manager, and I didn't know anything, but they hired me to be a test manager, which just screwed up our industry was at that time, and didn't really get any much better than that, except for a relatively small group of people who are working really hard to be great testers. But the problem is we're not getting a lot of support. So we have to band together and we have to drive it ourselves. And that just takes a lot of passion and a lot of energy. And that's the kind of thing that I want to talk about. And I have some constructive things to say about that. But first I have to talk about the phenomenon that we're dealing with. I've been a tester for 33 years. As of May 21st of this year, that would be my full 33 years as a specialist. 10 years as a test in Silicon Valley, and then as a testing consultant since then, expert witness, author, but mostly I teach and coach testers and take credit for Juka's work. For instance, at Northwestern Mutual, telling everyone only reason successful there probably because I love when people who have even the slightest tangential benefit from my work go on and do amazing things. And it's really been exciting to hear from Juka about all kinds of stuff's going on, good stuff that's going on at Northwestern Mutual with testing, which is being driven by specific passionate people who are craftspeople who say, we want to do good work. Well, anyway, let me get into my thread of my thing, or I'll just do this for the whole time. What is meta testing? Well, there's three meanings of meta. Okay, theoretical, self-referential, or the practical meaning of meta as well. So, am I talking about the study of the ontological or epistemic foundations of testing? No, not really. Am I? Although that's quite interesting. Am I talking about the testing of a testing process? That would be meta testing. No, not really, although that also is an interesting thing, and I've done that. I've done testing of a testing process. It's actually called audit testing, and you bring in a test team to test something that another test team has already tested, and then every bug you find that the first team didn't find, you analyze that and say, what does it say about the process that you didn't find this, and we did. That's interesting too. But what I want to talk about is creating or improving testing without necessarily testing. That aspect of meta testing. And if you think a little bit critically about this, and I hope you do, this just reminds me, if anyone wants to interrupt me any time, please do so. I love being interrupted. I really do it. Arguing with people is great, or arguing. Maybe you want to say something supportive. You can ask a question. You can make a comment. It's I just take all that in stride. So I encourage you to do that. But if you think a little bit critically about what I just said, you go like, creating or improving testing without necessarily. You mean test management? Is this just a talk on test management? Yes, that's what this is. I could have said test management instead of meta testing, but that doesn't sound as cool. But wait, it's a little bit different than that. It's a little bit, because I'm talking about test management without test managers. That's really the thing. You see, test managers once roamed the plains in the millions, but through overhunting, early mankind, the poor mammoth is now nowhere. So I had this idea, and then I thought, wait a minute, how did the mammoth actually die out? And it turns out interesting research about this, and there's all these different factors that went into it. This is pollen counts, and this is temperature records, and this is the arrival of humans. This is the mammoths. Here come the humans and the mammoths, and then the temperature starts going up a little bit, and all the mammoths are dead just when there's a big population spike of people. So it's kind of like, agilists and managers. It's not that simple. It's a little more complex than that. There were environmental factors that went into the loss of the mammoth. I was to discover that. So relating this exactly to testing, this is my lived history. This is my personal potted history of the decline and fall of test managers in the industry, based on how I experienced it in test conferences since 1989, and working at Apple since 1987, and talking with people, hearing from people, arguing with people, visiting. I've probably visited 200 companies or so, because I am a traveling consultant, so I get out, I see what's going on, and I hear the same kinds of complaints. But the first time I saw the beginning of this trend was in 1989, when Apple Computer disbanded its 400-person testing organization. And I argued against that. I said this will destroy testing culture at Apple Computer, which is a professional testing culture. We've worked really hard on this. Now, I had only been there 2 years, so maybe there was stuff going on even before that, and I just don't have that personal experience. Maybe this was the part of a long train that had already been happening before at 1989. But what happened is in 89 is there was a bunch of engineers at Apple that said, maybe we don't need testing groups. Maybe we should just have every team responsible for its own testing. Kind of sounds like Agile, which didn't come along for another 10 years as a thing, another about 12 years as a named thing. And I said, okay, but if you do that, what's going to happen is the people who are really into testing right now and really focus on it and really get good at it, they'll now be surrounded by people who don't care. And what are those people going to do? Maybe they're going to say, I want to hang out with people who care about what I'm doing, so I'm going to become a developer now. That's the respected thing. That's how you get power and influence around here. And I felt that did start to happen at Apple. They disbanded the groups. Then the subgroups got disbanded, and the subgroups got disbanded. I was the manager of one of the last little holdouts, last little groups of mammoths. I was in a test tools and technology team, and they kept me around for a little longer, and then said, we don't need you anymore. So I went on to Borland International, to the Borland C++ group, and was in charge of testing debuggers there. And they loved testing, and they believed it was very important. And so I got rejuvenated. So I felt like I left a certain melting glacier, found a Rivendell with the trees and the elves. But then the orcs came there, and they went to the Grey Havens. And this trend has been going on for a long time. Here's how I think the dynamics work. First, management abdicates the stewardship of craftsmanship in testing, so that management overall says, whatever, you testers just do what you do. In other words, they don't hold testers to a high standard. They just say, testers are evil, whatever, do what you do, I don't care what you do. Don't even tell me what you do, I'm not interested. We had problem at Borland. The developers didn't want to know what the testers did, so we didn't tell them. And then a new test director showed up, talked to the developers about what we did, and he told us, the developers say they have no idea what you do. And we're like, of course they don't. They don't want to know. They don't ask us. That's why we didn't tell them. Well, the problem is they're very and now they don't support you. So you're going to have to get them to know what you do. And so we began, the managers in that group began a real PR campaign about what we do and how we can be helpful to them and why they should love us and why we should love them and how we can work together. And it was quite successful. We had a beautiful relationship right around 93. And then that began to fall apart as well because of, again, management actions from above. They moved us into a new campus, and they separated all the testers from all the developers by several floors. So we had realized that we want to be right next to the developers. We are testers. We didn't say, like, we're not testers. We're just agile team people, and not active, and everyone sleeps in the same bed like it's a Big Brother reality show. It wasn't like that. We had a strong identity of testers, but we said our identity as testers is an identity that serves you and you. We are here to serve our team, and we shall serve it by being excellent testers. And the developer said, yeah, that's great. And we worked closely with them. Then they moved us to this thing where they forced us apart. And there was almost a strike. It came very close. There were lots of angry meetings with management because they designed the buildings so that people couldn't really work together. All the buildings, all that stuff on the top floor was offices for the developers. Everything else was cubicles. So they said, well, we have to put the developers on the top floor. That we designed it that way. Well, then after management abdicates stewardship and test managers in general fail to build credibility, then we have the problem of the destruction of test management because here comes Agile right around the late 90s, gaining strength, and it wasn't called Agile yet. In fact, asked me about what I thought it should be called. I said it should be called the holistic product development. Is a terrible name, and we're not going to ask you anymore. We were thinking Agile. Jim Highsmith on the phone said we were going to call it Agile. I'm like, oh, that's a good name too. It has a ring to it. And it's nice because it is Agile. So yeah, you should do that. Okay, but heuristic would have been good. But the problem is, here's the problem. Lean and Agile came along. You know who created Lean and Agile? People who aren't testers. People who know nothing about testing. People who only have met bad testers. Those are the people who created Agile. I've personally spoken and argued with Ward Cunningham, who, by the way, is one of the kindest, friendliest persons in the entire industry. Ward Cunningham, who is the co-creator of Extreme Programming. I recently met Kent Beck, who I have immense respect for because I insulted him from the stage, and he got up on the stage right after me, apologized to me. Wow, I was shocked. And then went on to explain his case and his side of things. And I was really listening to him. And I just couldn't believe how he did this Aikido emotional move that made me into his biggest fan. But he's good at it. So I give all kudos because I put him in a difficult place. I said, Kent, oh, there you are in the audience. I read your white book where you said nobody likes to test. You said it in black and white. Nobody likes to test, but you just have to do it. How dare you say that? Did you not know there's an entire testing industry full of people who have testing conferences who love testing? Come on, man. You really messed it up for me back then because people read your book and they're like, well, nobody likes to test, so why are you a tester, loser? Be a programmer if you want to be somebody. On an Agile team, we don't have specialists. What we mean by that is everyone must specialize in programming. That's exactly what they meant, specialize in programming. Of course, you have to know programming. I mean, you've got to breathe, too. You have to breathe, be able to walk, read, and everyone has to code. That's just normal. That's not a specialty. It reminds me of how I thought I was a great manager because I hired people who were and we all like comedy clubs and none of us had kids and we used to shoot Nerf balls at each other and yell all the time. We were frat boys basically. And I thought I was a great manager. Then I had to manage a team that I didn't hire and I found out management's hard. I was doing happy path management. I didn't realize it, where you just get to choose whoever gets to be on your island and they all have to kiss up to you or else they're out of here. That's over the next 10 years, I learned management is really hard. And then I learned that maybe I shouldn't be a manager after the classes and practice and everything. Maybe there's other people who are better at it than me. But anyway, so Lean and Agile came along, you see, and they said, no, have specialties. Let's all just work together. But then when you look at what those people actually spend their time getting good at, what did they study? What did they practice? Did they spend a fifth of their time studying testing? No. Did they spend a third of their time studying testing? No. Do they spend any time studying testing? No. And yet they say it's everyone's responsibility. It's a little like someone who says ethical behavior is everyone's responsibility. And no, I've never taken a philosophy class or discussed ethics at all, ever. It's just something everybody knows, right? You're just born knowing how to be ethical. Isn't that true? Well, by the way, it's not true. And you really should study philosophy if you say anything about ethics. And it helps to have people who specialize in ethics. So here's Lean and Agile. They come in, they're flashy, they're programmer, or in the words of Kem Kaner, they fired all the testers because the testers they were working with were sticks in the mud. They were not creative thinkers. They were not systems thinkers. They were process talkers, I guess, procedure followers. And I was fighting against those folks, trying to liberalize them and get them to think more like scientists and understand what exploratory testing really means and how testing is an exploratory process. And then I looked around and found out that Agile wasn't asking people like me to join their teams because I talk about testing. Or they want me to spend more time coding. By the way, I am a coder. I started as a developer, and I am a technical tester, and I never use the term test because you cannot automate testing. There's no such thing as automated testing. But I use tools intensively throughout my testing process. These tools are not automating my testing, but they are supporting my testing. So I'm very comfortable with that. And also, I was a test manager on the Borland C++ project and in the Apple Development Systems group. I always was testing developer tools because of my background as a developer. So I'm not opposed to coders. I'm just opposed to the hegemony of coders, the idea that only coding mentality matters and liberal arts doesn't matter and systems thinking doesn't matter and critical thinking doesn't matter. So testing craftsmanship lost its support base because it lost its management support. And then without that management support, and now you're in an agile world, now you're surrounded by people who don't share your sense of craftsmanship, that don't understand what your job is. At best, they shrug and go, do what you do. Well, you just said agile is anti-craftsmanship. I would say there's two kind of species of agile. One is the group hug type people who think that the magic of friendship will make all ponies strong. And the other culture is the Ward Cunningham and Kent Beck type who believe in being a Ronin. You know, you study your kung fu and you get very, very, very good at your job. That's what they were trying to do, is to be fantastic craftspeople. And Agile for them was taking control of the process so that they weren't having management telling them what to do. You know what? I think you're right. I think there are a lot more ponies than Ronin. That's a nice way to put it. And I have nothing against soft-hearted people who want to get along. In fact, I really need them. I need them. My wife is one, and I get tremendous benefit from the fact that my wife is the kind of person who runs a bed and breakfast in which I am the only guest. I mean, I love that. She gets along with everybody. She constantly makes me sign this, sign that. What am I signing? It's another Christmas card. I'm signing Christmas cards. She makes sure that she finds out if I offend somebody, and she tries to help me with that. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. Well, I'm only criticizing here pathologies. So anything can be a pathology, including what I do, can turn into a pathology, an obsession, an unhealthy overfocus, right? So I don't mean to say I'm free of that. In fact, I'm happy to talk about my particular pathologies myself and how I'm struggling to overcome them. So the upside of let's all work together is these are people who work on their social skills, their people skills, their ability to cooperate. They say, let's do things together, and they're comfortable doing things together, and they share a lot of things, and I think that's good. The downside of that I feel all the time, because I'm a disagreeable personality, is they can't deal with someone who comes in and says, I see a problem here. and I need to talk about the problem, and it may be uncomfortable, but I think this is a serious problem. But I know conflict. I don't know. Can you turn it into a rhyme and give me cookies while you're saying it? Then maybe I'll. Like this whole thing about lean coffee. Have you done lean coffee? I've never done lean coffee. I've just heard about it, but it seems like it's a system to help people who don't understand how to have a conversation to have a conversation. And I guess that's great if you're afraid to just sit down and talk with people. If you think I'll be dominated, I'll be bullied as soon as anything happens in a group setting. But if you have a comfortable time just having a conversation, you don't need to have some kind of elaborate process to sit down and have a conversation with someone. So I really don't understand the concept of lean coffee. You have little cards with topics or something, and you have a certain amount of time that you talk about it. Like, okay, we could do that, or we could just sit and talk about whatever you want. And when you want to interrupt me, you'll just interrupt me. And then when I want to interrupt you, I'll interrupt you. And if you feel I'm interrupting you too much, here's what I say: interrupt me more often. But how about that? We could do that. But if you really want, we could write down things on cards and then have a fixed time limit. Like, I suppose we could do that. But I'm uncomfortable in that situation. I'd rather be in a more freewheeling collegiate environment where I'm not worried that I'm going to hurt people with everything that I say. I'm always trying to help people to learn how to assert themselves to me. And I say, if you can assert yourselves to me, we won't need as many rules because you'll be comfortable. Okay, so I'll teach you how to get me to shut up. If that's what's needed, we're going to do work on that. So you feel not bullied and you feel free. What you're hearing from me is that instead of making rules, my philosophy is let's gain skills and let's apply heuristics. Instead of having rules enforced by unseen authorities, let's learn how to debate in a fair way. Let's recognize that someone with a loud voice like me has an unfair advantage. I recognize that. Let's come up with systems to counteract that, such as certain safe words that I can offer you that if you say them, I will instantly stop talking. So I offer that to people who have to work with me. But what I'm talking about is a craftsmanship mentality rather than a let's be afraid of conflict mentality. But I don't mean to in any way demean the idea of teamwork. It's very important. Teamwork is very important. And as long as it doesn't, in the words of Marshall McLuhan, reverse into repression and passive aggressiveness, then let's definitely be good at teamwork. Maybe we can do both. Maybe we can have great teamwork and we can have the craftsmanship stuff. But one thing I know about craftsmanship is you never get it without working for it. That's really the thing. Now, of course, when I was 22 years old, maybe I didn't believe that as much. Why do I believe that now? Oh, I'm 54. That's why I believe that now. Because I've lived a life and I've realized that it is a struggle to be good at what I do. And it has taken me a long time to be good at what I do. And anyone who's 25 just hasn't had the life experience to know how hard it is to be good at this stuff. So there's a certain amount of built-in bias that just comes with that. In any case, you're hearing me rant about craftsmanship, but I don't want to come off as a bully. I know I often do, but I hope that you hear me say that that if it sounds like that I'm just just dumping on people that have a different personality than me. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I hope that's not what's happening. I'm trying to get through my little history and I keep distracting myself. So management abdicates stewardship. Then Lean Agile comes in to fill the void, and they just say we don't even need managers. Everyone will self-manage. By the way, self-management is really popular amongst people who run these startup companies. Why? Because they don't have to do anything. It's really easy to be a CEO of some of these companies in certain ways because you just go, we're self-managing, so whatever, it's your problem. And I keep encountering this when I go in to teach people or consult, and like, oh, this is all screwed up. Let's go talk to management. Management shrugs and goes, well, it's what they want to do. Okay. So what do you do here? You run this company. Do you have any opinion about what these folks should do? At one point, I put out a set of recommendations to a company in Chicago and to their senior C-level people. Here's 8 recommendations for making yourself into a test craftsmanship organization. This is what you need to do. 8 things. What do you think? They said, we accept your recommendations. They accepted my recommendations. I was like, well, it was easy. And then nothing happened. And a few weeks later, I started asking, like, why has nothing happened? And one of the managers said, oh, well, now you just have to go sell it to all the people who work for us, because we're self-managing. So you mean you don't just tell them that you've accepted their recommendations and now you expect them to implement? Oh, no. What do you do here? So I had to go and try to negotiate with like 15 different teams, and none of them wanted to do any of these recommendations. So it was very strange. It's very strange because they didn't tell me in the meeting, we agree, but that doesn't matter. Then no one ever said, it makes absolutely no difference what we think. Why are you even talking to us? No one ever said that. So that's an abdication of management. Lean Agile comes in and says there should be no roles. Testing craftsmanship now loses its support. Support for testing craftsmanship came from test management. And then the support for test management came from business unit management and such like that. Testers then warp into what development people imagine testers to be. Their fantasy of what a tester is, which turns out to be more like a tool jockey or a developer assistant. Automate everything, they say. Just automate everything. Have you heard of Cucumber? Cucumber is a completely useless tool developed by someone who knows nothing about testing, who, as far as I can tell, was desperately trying to do anything they could to look like they were testing without actually having to do any testing. I know, I'll write a tool. I know that's what happened because I've done that before. I understand the psychology. You get excited about a test tool that you write, and you just get more and more excited. You want to expand it and expand it. But let me get this straight. It's a tool where you create this language to say dopey, simplistic things that you could easily just have written code to do directly. Like, why do I need Cucumber for that? I can write very simple code to do what Cucumber is pretending to do. And they go, well, oh, but then it's not English readable. Is that really the problem? Was the problem with automation that non-coders couldn't read it? Was that really the reason why you had trouble with automation? I don't think that was the trouble. I think there were other troubles, and it's a long way to go. It's a lot of work to do to implement Cucumber and have this little domain-specific language. And then you write all these things, but all those things are just doing very, very simple things. There's no loops. Where are my loops? I want to do things that require loops. Oh, no, we can't give you loops because that's coding. Like, all right, but that means that I can't have all these complicated test ideas then. I can only have simple test ideas. As a user, I want to be able to push a button so that my button gets pushed. I can write stuff like that. Really? This is better than what exactly? Just the sheer lack of sophistication, the sheer lack of imagination that is in any of those kinds of gherkin scripts. It's astonishing. And nobody I know who is a testing expert, who has a testing career, thinks any of that is a good idea. The people who think that's a good idea are developers who don't like testing, who've never studied testing. So they just want to do quasi coding and get away with that and have that say, that's a professional way to do things. I think that's what Cucumber's all about. And it's really depressing to me as a tester. All right, let's talk about that for a minute. Large number of tests. Counting test cases means absolutely nothing, right? It's like counting files. How many files did you create today, developer? Why are you asking? Well, I want to know how productive you were. Did you create 35 files, 392 files? Well, boy, I'm not even sure how to count them. The operating system automatically creates files. The compiler's creating files in the background. Do you include temporary files with that? I don't know. Stop with your philosophy and just count the number of files. 4,306 files. Wow, that's a productive day of development. I'm impressed. That's exactly the same intellectual content when people say I have 4,600 test cases. As a test expert who's written a book in testing and has spent his entire career studying testing, when you tell me you have 4,600 test cases, I say, I have no idea what you're talking about. But people who aren't test experts say, lots of testing there, very nice. Does that tell you something? I haven't counted test cases since July 12th, 1992. That was the last time I counted test cases. I have not counted test cases since then. I've always refused to. It's a fetish. It's not a scientific or reasonable or rational impulse. It's something that it creates a ritual that makes people feel like something has happened, even though it hasn't happened. So testers then become tool jockeys because they are being bullied, and they try to do whatever they can do to not be thrown off the team. These testers are perpetually overstressed. They don't have enough time to do their work, and they don't have enough clout to get more time. So this is a real challenge. It turns out there are certain trees that miss mammoths. There are certain trees that can't get pollinated anymore because the mammoths used to eat their huge seeds and spread them around, and now they're gone. That's kind of, there's an unseen ecology to management. Test managers turned out to be doing something really important. Test managers were managing psychological pressure. They were keeping testers from being bullied. They were giving testers a craftsmanship focus so that they would get better and better at their jobs. I mean, the good test managers were. Of course, there were bad test managers that said, how many test cases do you have? I want more test cases. I was lucky enough to work for very good managers for the first 10 years before I got a bad manager. And then I immediately went independent. So I lucked out in my career. So now skilled testing though. So what's happening to the skilled tester? We are being pressed on two sides. On one side, we have automation. On the other side, we have users with low expectations. And the users with low expectations and the automation people are eating away until people very simply say, look, I can just automate these simple output checks and my dopey users keep downloading the apps. So if there's a problem, we'll just rev the app. We'll just fix the bug. And they'll get an update and it'll be fine. Why are you so obsessed with quality all the time and doing things perfectly? So we don't need these troublesome people. Let's just push on the automation. And these people are now used to it. They're used to having a low standard. They're used to things. They're used to their personal data getting stolen. No one gets super outraged anymore when Microsoft does something that loses a bunch of people's data. Nobody says, congressional investigations are needed. There must be penalties. Instead, Microsoft just says, whoopsie, well, what are we going to do? We're doing the best anyone could reasonably do. Yeah, unless, of course, you hired a bunch of testers who actually did a good job testing, they might find some of these problems. Oh, but that's expensive and they're so troublesome and it's not agile. How about you just get used to whatever we give you? Just like it took us, 20 minutes to get signed into this thing because Microsoft kept refusing to let me sign in. There was some kind of weird glitch going on. I don't know, but I trudge ahead anyway. So here's what we need to do. We need to become good meta testers. This is meta testing. Let me get to my point. This is meta testing. These kinds of things are meta testing. Focus on yourself, your project, and other people who test. Developing your professional mentality. Developing your testing methodology. Do you even know what your personal testing methodology is? Most people don't. Most people haven't even studied methodology. They don't know what methodology is, which I don't mind if they're young. But once you have more than a few years in the field, it's time to know how to do your job, and it's time to know that you know how to do your job. We don't expect this from really young people. We just expect them to solve technical problems and learn to get along with each other. Okay, but at a certain point, we got to get good. Developing yourself as a coach, building your credibility so people will listen to you. All that kind of thing. In your project, advocating for the testing role, negotiating the scope and mission of testing. I won't read all this stuff. I just wanted to put this blizzard in front of your face. They always say, don't make tiny type. Okay, there's all kinds of experts who will say, don't make slides that have tiny type on them. Well, they're wrong. The reason to make slides with tiny type on it is it gives you a visceral impression. The visceral impression is there's a lot to it. I will make these slides available to you so that you may study them at your leisure. And if you have any questions about any item on here, you can ask it now, you can ask me later. So this is for people who like to read, but I'm not going to read every single one of these things. Oh, I forgot I did a little zoom in thing. Isn't that cool? A little zoom in thing. So you can see them a little bit easier. Okay. But I would argue all this stuff is meta testing, organizing testing events, like an event where you get a bunch of people to come together and test your product, and none of them are full-time testers, but you create the event, you create the environment for that event. And if you're going to do that, you don't make anybody there write bug reports. Never have an amateur write a bug report. Give them a bell, say, and get you back into testing again. We'll take a picture of your screen. We'll snapshot your log file, and you'll get testing. And then we'll write all the bug reports. That way, testing is fun. So organizing a testing event means making testing fun for amateurs, not having them do any of the boring paperwork, that kind of thing. Trying to find ways to document testing that is lean as it can be, so that people aren't writing these test scripts, these long test scripts, these silly test scripts that don't tell you anything, don't communicate anything, and just hold you back. So I want to focus on two of these many things: developing your professional mentality and advocating for a testing role. So I'm going to go through some slides I do in my regular class these days, but actually I developed them for this talk and then I moved them into my class. Those of you who are in my class, maybe forgive me for this. I want to talk about 6 mentalities of the responsible tester. I would say anyone who is a responsible tester must have these 6 mentalities. That's my claim. I also would say maybe your list would be different. Maybe if you look at this, you'd say, I would say it's 8 mentalities, and I would arrange them a little differently. Well, maybe you would. So I'm just giving you an idea of one way to break it down. But one thing I want you to notice here is only one of these actually is technical in any way. Well, maybe 2 of them are technical. The other ones are human. They're social. In other words, to be a responsible tester, you must develop the hard wood of being a responsible person. I also have a particular definition of responsible tester that I'd like to offer you now. I distinguish between a responsible tester and a supporting tester. A responsible tester is a tester who is held accountable for the quality of their own work. A supporting tester is not held accountable. It's the supervisor of the supporting tester who is held accountable for the quality of the person's work. So a supporting tester is meant to come onto a project and say, what do you want me to do? You want me to do that? I'll do that. And you don't expect a supporting tester to say, that's not a good thing to do. You shouldn't do that. Like, well, be quiet and help me. I didn't hire you. I didn't bring you in here to be the strategy master. I have my own strategy. Just, are you willing to help me or not? So a supporting tester can be anyone, could be a senior developer, could be a supporting tester at a certain place and at a certain time who comes in. I'm a supporting husband sometimes, and other times I'm a responsible husband. When my wife needs me to put up the labels on her jewelry that she makes, I'm a supporting husband who does it her way. It must be done to her specifications, exactly what she wants. I'm not supposed to get creative or think of a better way to do it. If I do, she won't ask me to ever again. And yet she will want help. You see, it works like that. So I want to be a good supporting husband. Other times I'm responsible husband. I'm expected to lead. I'm expected to decide how to do it. And then she'll be supporting wife. So we switch back and forth depending on the situation, depending on what she wants. In our marriage, which has lasted so far 29 years, the way we make the decision is whoever wants to lead more is the leader in that situation. So we just, who wants it more? Who wants it more? Okay, you do. You're making Thanksgiving dinner. There you go. Good luck. What can I do to help you? All right. She always lets me do the talks, though. I'm the talk guy. All right, so let me go into what these things are. Let's say at the core of everything, the yoke within the yoke within the yoke is the agent mentality. If you don't have the agent mentality, you cannot be a responsible tester or a responsible developer or a responsible anything. The agent mentality is the mentality that says, I can make choices on my own behalf. I have agency. That's what agency means. When someone says, you're taking away my agency, what they mean to say is, you think I don't have choices, but I do. I can decide to do this or decide not to do this. You can't decide for me. I almost wanted, instead of agent, I almost wanted just to say adult, because every adult is supposed to have agency. But sometimes adults struggle with agency because they've been beaten down in their lives, because they're afraid of things, they're afraid of losing their jobs. So I've definitely met a lot of people who say, I just do this because I don't want to get yelled at, not because I think it's good work. Now, I think that's irresponsible behavior, but I also have some compassion for it, because being beaten down is a real thing, and you can't just wish it away, you know? But if I'm going to help someone become a responsible tester, the first thing I want to work on is their agency. One way I do that is I train them to say no to me. They can't say no to me, who's their coach, who's their teacher. How can I expect them to say no to anyone else? So I can control their success rate of saying no to me. So that's what I usually try to work on first, is to give them practice in seeing what happens when you want something different than what I want, and you tell me that, and like, well, let's see. Do you get beat up? Do you get attacked? Or do you get treated respectfully? Maybe if I can show them how that can be a good experience, they can start saying, maybe it's good to be assertive. Maybe that can work. So then outside, it's the craftsman mentality. That's the mentality that says, I am good at my job. I seek to be good at my job. I take pride in my work. If you don't take pride in your work, I don't know how you can be a responsible tester or a responsible technical person of any kind. At the very core is the idea that I made a mistake and I'm embarrassed by that, and I don't want to be embarrassed. I want to get better so I won't make that mistake again. Then There's the analyst mentality. This is the mentality that says, I'm smart and I can figure stuff out. Bring on the complexity, because I'm not afraid of it. Again, I too many testers who don't show me anything that's got numbers in it or formulas or code. Anytime I meet someone who says, I don't read code, I can't read code, I say, I've got some code for you to read. I've got some code for you to read, and you will be amazed because you will find that you can read code. And I show them some dense Perl code. Say, analyze this code from a testing point of view, and tell me what you think. Tell me anything that comes to your mind. And the code that I show them has comments in it that say things like, we better remember to take this out. And and in the middle of it, there's a thing that says, if x equals 3, print out, your hard drive is corrupted. Ha, ha, ha. And I'm expecting them to look at that and go, is that really a good error message? Should we have an error message like that? And how could this tool actually corrupt the hard drive, and why would you worry about that? That's the kind of thing that I think can happen. So what you realize is, wait a minute, code is just a lot of English with some other stuff stuck into it. I can actually get something out of reading code. Maybe I am smart enough to do this. Just because I don't understand everything about this code doesn't mean I don't understand something about this code. And that's the first step to becoming a successful, I wasn't almost going to say sexy, I meant successful analyst. Is to say, I can handle this. I can learn even though I'm confused. I can get somewhere, and I don't need to get everywhere. So suddenly a lot of emotional baggage drops, and you start feeling like maybe I'm more powerful than I thought I was. I'm excited about all these things. Every one of these things, Jerry Weinberg or another one of my mentors or teachers early on in my career, they did it for me. I was hired by a guy named Chris Brown at Apple Computer. Why did he hire me? I was not qualified. He saw some kind of super enthusiasm. Indeed, I would have chewed my way through the drywall to work at Apple Computer, and I think he sensed that and decided not to tempt fate and hired me. But Chris Brown left the industry a few years after I left Apple, and he became a therapist. He counsels people in prison now, and I'm thinking that's just perfect. No wonder you were such the perfect boss for me when I was 21 and 22. He was great. He was the kind of guy who would say, like, have you really questioned your motivations, James? Have you really thought about what you're trying to achieve? Before you argument to that developer, ask yourself, what do you want to achieve? And is saying this going to get it for you? I'm like, I guess that's a good point. I'll think about that. And then you yell at them if you really need to. But first, think about that. So that was the kind of thing that I got from Chris Brown. He taught me a lot of this stuff that I'm now becoming aware of. He didn't explain it to me with slides like I'm doing here. Here's another one, provider. The provider mentality is short for service provider or family, provider, like in a family. I wanted to say servant in the first version of this, but people don't really understand. Being a servant is not a bad thing. Too many people in America think serving is a low thing that you shouldn't do. When I think of service, I think of all the things my mother did for me, all the incredible things my wife does for my son, and then you just say thank you, and it fills her gas tank for 3 weeks. Amazing and startling how much work my wife puts into the family. Doesn't payment for it, just does it, and that's the provider mentality. My family, my team, I take care of my team. You're on my team, I take care of you. So the provider mentality is not required for the analyst mentality. You can have the analyst mentality, be a terrible provider. You could be a provider and be an awful analyst. But if you want to be a good critic, I think you need the provider mentality and the analyst mentality to be an effective, professional, responsible critic. Whether you're a film critic, a food critic, any kind of critic, a theater critic, you need this. A tester is a kind of critic. We want to be an effective, responsible critic. So on the outside of everything is the tester mentality. The tester mentality is given structure. It's given substance by all these other mentalities inside. So if I try to teach you to test and you say, I want to know how to write test cases. And I go, okay, why do you want to learn how to write test cases? Because my boss says I got to write test cases. That's why you want to learn? Yes, I have to learn. So what if you didn't learn how to write test cases? My boss would yell at me. I don't like being yelled at. Okay, do you think writing test cases will lead to a better world where your company is better protected? Well, I don't know. I just do what I'm told. So when I hear stuff like that, I go, we need to work on some of this other stuff before I give you a test case template. Because giving you a test case template is not going to help you very much. You will remain unfulfilled, comprehending about why you haven't achieved your goals and dreams. You'll feel like an amateur. You'll feel like a fake. Maybe. I don't know that a tester would have to be a teacher. Think about that. Is a teacher a fundamental element of a testing mentality? I might put that for management. I'm not sure for I have to think about that.
I just think, from my perspective, and I love professor and I'm a manager side.
Yeah.
And I just feel that it's not only a teacher of your individual peers,
Yeah.
but also helping developers understand where you're trying to come from.
Good point. Yeah. Well, there's a whole lot of rhetoric we have to engage in the old sense of the term of being persuasive in your speech and in your writing. We must be rhetorically effective. We must be good storytellers, and that overlaps quite a bit with a teacher. You know, that's an interesting thing to think about, and I'm going to think about that. And that might be something that is an interesting to take here. Huh. And especially, I'm a teacher. I call myself a tester, but what am I actually paid to do? I'm paid to teach people. I'm paid to make people be stronger, to feel stronger. That's what I love doing. And if I hadn't been in the testing business, I'd be in some other business trying to help people feel better and feel stronger. I just happen to only be able to make money in this industry. So this is the industry I'm in. But what really gets me excited when someone goes from being confused and easy to bully to someone who's strong and assertive but still nice and impossible to bully and feels good about themselves, that just makes me feel wonderful. Like I've just rescued a dog from a puppy mill. Is how I feel. How those people must feel is how I feel. You can have a tester mentality with none of the other elements to it. You can just go to ISTQB school and learn the vocabulary words. You learn equivalence class partitioning, the boundary value analysis. It's interesting that people talk about boundary value analysis, and you ask them what is boundary value analysis, and they tell you, a process that involves no analysis whatsoever. You try the biggest and you try the smallest. That's boundary value analysis. Wait, where's the analysis? Did I miss that? But people memorize this stuff. They just memorize a bunch of techniques. They pass a little test and they go, I'm a tester, I guess. And what they're really doing is they're muddling through, hoping that they aren't discovered to be a fraud. What you can do in leading them is when I'm taking someone like that and saying, let me coach you. If you want me to coach you, I can help you get over that feeling and start feeling strong and powerful and feeling like you have a definite path toward a better self-respect. What I do is I import, there it is, supervisor, coach. I import my mentality to them, which is a temporary prosthesis. They see how I might respond to certain things, and then I hope some of that starts implanting itself like a potted plant that you've brought into a garden inside of them. So I think good testers become that way most rapidly when properly supported and coached. I wasn't properly supported and coached very much, not by people who knew how to test. I had to struggle for years to learn how to test. But the 10 years I spent getting to feel like I was an expert tester, anyone else with my help could do it in a year because you're not in a maze. I was in a maze where I didn't know which way to turn. So I went this blind alley, that blind alley. Now I could say, oh, okay, you need to learn about heuristics. Boy, that took me 5 years just to find the word heuristic and understand how important it was 5 years. And you need to understand about epistemology. That was 8 years before I found out about epistemology and cognitive psychology. And there's direct lessons there, and experiment design. Read books on experiment design. That took me years to figure out. No one was telling me this stuff, but now I've written my book, other people have written books to say there is a pathway. So these people, these newer people, they can become as good as us much faster. And I find that exciting. Please don't be a fake tester. There are a lot of fake testers in the world. There's an entire industry of fake testing, which only exists to make management feel that the product has been tested and give them someone to blame when something goes wrong. And that way, no one executive. It's this model, a lot of money on that if I could stomach it, but I can't. So I turned down my chance to be the leader of the ISTQB when I was being recruited for this back in 2001. Told them that I would do everything I can to destroy them, and then they became super rich and powerful. And I heard the guy who started it has a house in the Bahamas, which I hope was destroyed by a hurricane. No, I don't hope he was in it at the time. I'm not a monster. I just want him to have to, put on new window frames or something and think of me. The developer mentality. Look how the development mentality is different. Critic becomes maker. Everything else is the same. Oh, but also developer, this outermost developer thing, in that is all the coding and how to use it and all the little techniques. That's the outermost structure. The innermost structure is all the same kinds of things. The hardwood, that heart of a lion is all inside here. But there's a big difference between critics and makers. Critics say, I invent things that end your troubles. Critics say, I'm going to find trouble even in that. And then the maker says, well, I'm going to fix that, and I'm going to find more problems. And so there's this tension between critics and makers. And while I have this tension and I experience this tension, the provider in me wants to be friends. It wants to be liked, because it knows it can't do its job unless I'm friends, unless I'm liked. So there's this terrible tension in us testers between being likable, Juka, and being assertive and strong and true in your mission to effectively critique the product. It is not easy to walk that line. And sometimes you're called names, and they used to joke at me at Borland, oh, we should tie a bell to James so we could hear him coming and scatter before he comes here, all that kind of stuff. Critical distance is necessary so that we can get perspective on something. When I say critical distance, I mean a different way of thinking about something. That gives you critical distance. if you get people together and they all have different ways of thinking about something, it is very irritating. And what you realize is that creates social distance. Social distance we don't want. We want to bring people together. The pony thing. Let's bring people together. Let's lower the social distance and things will be better. That's the idea of the let's all work together school of Agile. And that is fine, but then everybody starts thinking the same way and nobody is out for trouble because nobody wants to say the irritating thing. Are you sure is this really a good idea? Like, shut up and be constructive. So I have to manage my social distance and my critical distance. Test managers used to do this. That used to be their job, to help manage social distance and critical distance. Now each of us has to do this for ourselves. Here's my basic heuristic for testers. The testing specialist role, which might be a test, or it might be a test coach, or it might be a quality advocate position in your organization, but someone who specializes in the world of testing, that's a heuristic, not a best practice, because I don't do best practices, I only do heuristics. If you don't know the difference between a best practice and a heuristic, here's the difference. Best practice is nonsense. That's marketing language. No engineer says best practice and really means it. Engineering people, we solve problems. And if a practice solves a problem, it's a good practice in that context. If a best practice does not solve a problem, we stop doing it because it's not solving the problem. You have to do what solves the problem. A heuristic is a way of solving problems. A heuristic is a fallible method of solving a problem. My attitude about heuristics comes from a very influential book on me called Discussion of the Method by Billy Cohen, who is a professor, an engineering professor at some Texas university. He wasn't a software engineer. He was like a civil engineer type of guy, I believe. And he had this whole book talking about how everything in engineering, every single thing is heuristics. It's all fallible, and we have to navigate through that and apply heuristics. So I was really influenced by that, and I decided to adopt his idea that everything is heuristic. So the testing specialist role, it's not an infallible solution, but it is a helpful thing to consider doing if you want to develop, operate, and express good testing mentality across an organization. Because good testing mentality doesn't just happen unless somebody makes it happen. And that person is going to have to be one who has special interest, special focus. And that brings me to the idea of roles. Agilists frequently say, oh, we don't want silos, so we don't want roles. They think roles are a bad thing. Don't label me. Okay, but here's what you lose when you don't have a role. When you say, I have no role, I just float around and do whatever I feel like doing at the moment. Okay, what that means is you're not committed. You're not committed to anything. You're telling me you have no commitment to do anything. I'm committed. What are you committed to? Making the world a better place in Agile through vague statements and platitudes? That's not quite a specific commitment, is it? How about if you say, I commit to ensuring that the right testing happens at the right time. Whether I do it or not, I will ensure that it does get done. I will personally arrange it. I will personally focus on that. Okay, that's a commitment. Now, if you say, but everyone commits, go, but do they? Do they really all commit to it, or immediately start coding and forget all about the testing? That's really a commitment is an investment of your energy, an actual palpable investment of your time. It's not just a statement that you make. The second thing, what a role gives you is competence. You promise to be competent. You promise to develop the competence and maintain the competence that you need in order to fulfill your commitment. If you don't have a certain role, like if my role isn't being a paramedic and then you have a heart attack, okay, so am I going to give you CPR? I might. I know how to do CPR. But if my role isn't being a paramedic, I'm not expected to have that. I'm not required. I never committed to have that competence. But I happen to have some competence in that area. So if there's no one else around, I can render aid. I will render aid. So I'm not just saying having a role is the only reason to have competence, but I'm saying when you say my role is X, you are implicitly promising to know what you're doing. And if you don't know what you're doing, you're promising to come to know what you're doing over a reasonable period of time. The third thing, and this is a big one, is readiness. Here's what you rarely see in agile projects when people say everyone's responsibility is testing. You rarely see people actually spending an hour in a given day saying, okay, so what are we going to need 3 weeks from now to do great testing? Is there a tool we need to buy? Is there training we need to do? Are we going to need to reserve some space? Do we need some Amazon Web Services servers to be reserved for us? Do we need to do something with Kubernetes? Are we going to need to develop some test data that we don't need now, but we're going to need in 2 weeks? And if we don't do it now, we won't have it in 2 weeks. Readiness means you're going to have to think. What I keep seeing, people will go, oh, testing's everyone's responsibility. So after a long day of coding, I just say like, oh, I guess it's time for testing. What should I do? I guess I'll write some unit tests, because that's easy. It's convenient. I understand unit tests. I'll just do the easiest thing that I can do. And there I fulfilled my responsibility. We all have a responsibility to test. And finally, coordination, to coordinate the test process with other activities, to coordinate it across the calendar, to coordinate it across time and space, to make sure that the testing activity is understood by people who need to support the testing activity, all that kind of thing. That's a coordination activity. Take away the testing role, all this stuff begins sinking into the swamp until it becomes a Mayan ruin, a lost city in the Amazon, and everyone's just an amateur tester. Which, if you don't believe that testing is important, you don't believe that testers have it, being an amateur means you're not a very good tester. It's like if I've never seen a road race before, a NASCAR race. If I've never seen a NASCAR race before, then I would say, I'm probably pretty good at car racing. I'm probably really fast on the road. But I have actually seen professional race car drivers with all the advanced technology and in-car videos and all that. And I have a sense that they practice a lot and they're really good at what they do. And I probably would need to train for a while to get very good at that job. They say they shouldn't have silos because they think this is what's going on. I want to be a tester. No silos. Wait a minute. I didn't say anything about a silo. I'm not going to go into this fortress, bar the door, and then pour, buckets of slop onto anyone who knocks on my door. Who does that? Is there any silo, really? I mean, one of these silos that they're telling us in Agile not to have? Like, don't come into my office. Never talk to me. Don't look at me in the eye. I say this, but I actually have seen silos at government agencies. I saw Department of Housing and Urban Development for the 3 weeks I could stand to work there before I resigned. I saw people who said, not I care. Oh, I'm just trying to work this out with you. Well, I wasn't told to work with you, so I'm not going to work with you. Like, well, okay. I think we got silos here. Windowless silos. But I haven't really seen that in the commercial world. We tend to be more helpful. I think of it like this: I'm the tester. I have the testing role. Welcome to my villa, my party villa. Visit me in my testing villa. I invite you. I implore you. Be my guest. And when you come to my testing villa, you will not have to do the dishes. You will not have to prepare the meals. You will not have to fix the roof. Don't worry about that chair you broke. Come and enjoy your testing fun time. And when you're tired of testing, you can leave and I'll clean up after you. Because my role is testing. Your role is development or marketing or tech support. That's what you do. And maybe I can visit you in your tech support villa and be on the phones for a while and learn about tech support, but maybe you will not expect me to be super great at it. And you forgive me for breaking your furniture and losing some customers. But, it's good, a good experience. So it's not a silo, it's an open environment. Let me put it this way. If this is a diagramming system my brother and I created to talk about different role scenarios. So if this is a task, this is a person who's committed to doing the task, and this is the contract that the person makes to do that thing, then let's make this a dashed line, meaning it's a porous, open role where people can come in and help. An example of something that's a closed role would be airline pilot. You can't just go in and help the airline pilot. They don't like you doing that. So I let people come in and help me test, and they go crazy, woo, and they make a mess. But I say here, it's my responsibility. Thank you for helping, guys. You found some good bugs. I'll write them up now. Have fun back whatever you were doing for a living before you did this. That could be cool. Not a silo, but it could be someone who's a coordinator. It could be someone who's a coach. It could be someone who's a teacher. Meta tester has got to have a teacher element to it, I think, if you're talking about the meta testing kind of thing. So anyway, maybe this is your context. Maybe you care about testing, but maybe no one else cares about testing. If that's the case, then you've got to go meta in the sense that you have to try to tell stories about effective testing that get people excited about letting you do your job. One of the ways that I try to do that is I have a set of 13 commitments that I make as a tester to anyone I'm working with. I put these in writing. I hand them to every developer I work with. No developer I've ever handed this to has ever seen any other thing like that. No one's ever said, oh, the last tester I had 15 commitments, so, but I'll take it. They go, what's this? Those are my personal unilateral promises to you. I promise to do all that stuff for you. You don't have to promise me anything. This is part of my professional discipline. And I go down all the things, 1 to 13. Including I provide a service. I'm not satisfied with this service unless you are satisfied. If you say you're not satisfied with my testing, I'm not going to say screw you. I'm going to say, well, I'm not satisfied either. I might not agree with you, but we're just going to have to talk about it and keep talking about it, and we'll work it out because I can't just ignore how you feel about being my client. I promise I will never take lightly your feelings about my work. So I do various things to try to melt this, to try to make them feel like, oh, we're working with someone who makes us feel better about ourselves. And this, as you could tell from the first 10 minutes of the talk, it doesn't come natural to me to make people feel better about themselves. I've had to really work at it, and sometimes I vent a little bit instead. But I know that my success in a project and in a consulting engagement and in a teaching situation, it absolutely depends on my ability to make someone feel strong instead of weak. Weakening someone doesn't help me unless I see them as an obstacle that I need to break through. But if I see them as someone who is a teammate on whom my success depends, getting them stronger is what is the solution. That's going to be my success. So it's just a different mentality. So I'm going to try to get people to care about testing. That's what I would do. Maybe you care about testing and everyone else cares about testing, but you realize that what they think testing is automation, cucumbering, writing Gherkin scripts. And you go, that's not really testing. And they go, what? Yes, it is, because I read the Kent Bett book, and he said it was, no one likes testing, but this is good enough. And so you go, oh, okay. You got to try to find something good about what they're doing, if you can. That's just a human relations 101. But what I am going to do is I'm going to express and continue to express a powerful vision of testing, a powerful vocabulary of testing. Everyone else will say test automation, and I will say automation, or I'll say tool-supported testing, but they will slowly notice that I never use the term test automation, and I'll say automated checking every time I'm pointing at the same thing that they're pointing at. Automated output checking, yeah, that's what that is. And they'll, at first they won't notice that I'm using different words, and then after a while they might notice that I'm using a vocabulary which is self-consistent and effective and precise, and I'm hoping that over time they see that this is a professional discipline that I'm bringing, and I hope that they will appreciate me on the level of being a professional. Unfortunately, my experience with this is it takes 18 months. It takes 18 months until a team decides you're okay. You're certified useful. At least every time I've done it, it has taken me 18 months until I got old enough and famous enough, and then people just assume that I'm good. But even then, only the people that hire me think that I'm good. Then they immediately assign me to work with some 25-year-old kid who goes, who are you? And why should I care about what you think? And I have to go 18 months with that person, which I never have 18 months, so it never happens. I just, start on the process, and then the project ends or something, and that's that. So, there you go. But it can take a long time for people to go from, what do you know, to an attitude of, we want you to hear about this plan first because your opinion of it controls whether we're going to do anything or not. If you don't like it, then forget it. I love the feeling of people thinking my opinion is that important, but boy, it takes a lot of time of wearing them down and showing that you're able to, this, how long has it been for you so far? Has it been 18 months yet? 2 years. It can take up to 2 years. So. And you kept asking that. See, most testers are silent in those meetings, and it drives me nuts. I say, you got to talk about testability. You got to talk about test strategy. That's how you're going to make your mark. That's my brother. Yeah. It works out eventually. Well, all I can say, Juka, is class of mine or something. Yeah. Must not have made so much trouble for me because I didn't remember. I see. Right. Right. But then Juka joined the RST Slack forum. And she started saying this, she started putting out these progress reports where she would say, oh, I had a meeting today where I'm talking about session-based test management, and I've recreated session-based test management. I changed it from what you had, James, to my own version of it, and it now is this, this, and this. And so I had this meeting, and this is what they told me, and she's just pouring out all these details. And we started out going like, oh, that's cool. But then after like the 10th update or whatever, it's like, you are really on fire. You are serious about this. You I must be taken seriously. So now I'm thinking I have to go over what you've done. I have to collaborate with you. I have to change my method to reflect how you have changed it for yourself, because you now have more experience with the method than I have. So you're winning respect, at least amongst Michael Bolton and I on the RST forum. But I can tell other people on the forum, they know who you are. And I'm just so happy because it's brought a lot of energy to the RST forum. And it's so great because so often I feel like I'm teaching this stuff, but can I really prove that anyone but me can do it? I can't, unless somebody like Juka says, I do it. I do it, except I do a better version of it. I do my own version of it. And then I feel like now I'm dealing with a real craftsman, someone who makes it her own. That's key. You have to make it your own. And then I know I'm successful. But that doesn't happen very much. So I just clean the little campfires that warmed me in the great cold. You care about testing. Everybody cares about testing, but they are really busy and need help to do it well and make it better. I hope this is your context. Lots of people are busy and they don't know much about it, but they want you to help them. They like that you are excited about testing, even if they can't get excited. It's like when my wife tells me about some new job and she's learned how to make a snake knot, and do I want to see how to make a snake knot? And the answer's, but I don't say that. I take an interest in what she's doing because it's her excitement about it, and I'm excited that she's excited, and I want to honor her for what she does and how she's getting better at her art. I'm totally unqualified to judge her art. I mean, all the bracelets look the same to me. They did her bracelets, but I assume it's good. But I can see her art is getting more complex over time. So that much I can tell. There's more knots and more time it takes her to weave these intricate bracelets. By the way, my wife will make a bracelet for anyone who expresses an interest in her bracelets, and she gives them away for free. She also sells them, but she loves giving them away for free. So if you do like bracelets, send an email to lenore@satisfice.com and say, I've heard about your fascinating jewelry. Would you mind sending me a few pictures? And she'll say, I'll make you one. And then she makes $12,000 a year, but she runs my business. So she earns her keep. She earns her keep in a big way. She handles all the finances and all that stuff. I can't do it without her. If you ever hear that my wife died, call the suicide prevention hotline because danger. Yes. Okay. Well, I'm at the end. This is the end of my presentation, my rambling presentation. Would anyone like to make any comments, polite comments here at the end? I mean, you could, of course, have interrupted me at any time, but maybe there are polite people who didn't want to interrupt me in the middle of everything. You can comment, you can rebut, you can ask a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, have you ever given this esque of a presentation for something that's more cross-disciplinary, something that isn't explicitly on this topic, but it's the exact same thought process?
I have done a little bit of that, a little bit of talking about, for instance, critical thinking to people who aren't even technical people. I'm developing a critical thinking class for managers in any industry. And it's a real challenge to talk to people who don't know anything about software necessarily. They solve management type problems, business type problems. So I've begun to dabble a little bit in that. I've also done talks about self-education, which were to audiences. I've done some of that kind of thing. I certainly could do if someone asked me. We want to talk to development managers or marketing managers or people who, whatever. I would adapt this stuff and I would pull out all the testing stuff. And I would mention testing here and there because it's my background. There's a book called Tools for Critical Thinking by David Levy. Are you familiar with this book? Have you read it? Okay, well, if you read it, you will say, what's with this author? He has a weird obsession with crazy people. So all his examples are like, so a guy with schizophrenia, I'm like, what? And then I'm halfway through it, and I'm learning all this stuff about critical thinking. And then I turn back to the front, and the subtitle is like meta thoughts for psychoanalysis. He wrote it for people who are psychiatrists and therapists. It was a book for them for critical thinking, and that explains all of his examples with their strange emphasis on people with mental illnesses of different kinds. But I honestly go through the whole half the book or so before I even realized it, because everything he was saying was relevant to me, guy. So I ended up writing a review and writing him a letter and thanking him for his book. It was a really useful book, Tools for Critical Thinking by David Levy. I love how his chapters are 3 pages long, 4 pages long. We actually took that idea and used that in lessons learned in software testing. We wanted to make our chapters very, very short for exactly the same reason. So it's a 293 chapter book. Each chapter is one idea written for busy people. And I did that because David Levy's book was so easy to read. But again, he comes from this other world, but I feel like I benefited so much from ideas about critical thinking. So I would love to speak to a more general audience. And in fact, in order to stay in business with this very difficult economic environment that we're going into, I'm thinking I'm going to have to start teaching a general audience about critical thinking, and I might not be able to make enough money with testing training to keep the lights on, because I refuse to do certification. I'm not going to sell out. I might do certification that takes a whole year or something like that, but you know, the ISTQB kind of cut rate fake certification, I can't do that, but that's what a lot of people want, their little certificates. So I've got to find a business model that works better. I'm going to try a lot more online training. I do online training. I have an online rapid software testing applied class where you actually test stuff, and I write up bug reports, and then I analyze every bug report and respond to it as if I were a manager on the project. And that's the Arista online testing class, and I'm going to develop some more online training. And then I hope to just nudge it a little bit to make a bigger. So I would like to be able to do that, and I hope I get the opportunity. If you want us, an audience I could talk to, I'll try to talk to them. And what? Data science. So I would love that, because I'm into data science as a total amateur, but I'm a data science enthusiast. Really? Well, I guess you're right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Oh, that's cool. There's a guy named, is his name Stephen Few? Have I got that right? A famous data science guy. I might have gotten his name wrong. He does some data science website, and he's always talking about this kind of stuff, the social difficulties of data science, and he hates the term big data. He thinks it's just a marketing term. It's like me and best practices. He doesn't like big data. What's big data anyway? All right, well, thanks for the comment. Anything else? Yes?
You made the comment that unit tests aren't worth counting, which made me really think as a developer about the metric for like.
Yeah, do you think line of code is a useful metric?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
And yet, when I look at our code base, I can say that it's severely under-tested. So if the tests or whatever, what you try to look at, what do you try to maximize as you're trying to figure out whether the code is tested well enough?
Well, I like to shift from measurement to a different word. And that different word is assessment. And then another word that goes with it, evidence. Assessment, evidence. The word metrics does. I definitely want to collect evidence, and I definitely want to perform an assessment. So how do I do that? I'm going to have to use reasoning. I'm going to have to data of different kinds. But just as in data science isn't a matter of just counting things and then showing counts in bar graphs. It's to understand the structure and related to some decision process that you may have to make and effectively communicate to someone who has to perform that decision process in a way that their decision process actually gets better. It's much more than just count stuff and make a bar chart. Similarly, I don't start with thinking about metrics. I start with saying, what's here? What matters? Why does it matter? What are we trying to accomplish? Why are we trying to accomplish? Metrics might fall out of that. Urge you, if you're really interested in metrics though, I urge you to get a book called Your Code as a Crime Scene. Have you heard of that book? Your Code as a Crime Scene is a book with some really inventive metrics ideas in it, written by a guy named Adam Thornhill, I believe, who is wonderful to see speak. He's so thoughtful. He's so interesting, and he has a degree in criminology, and he's a developer. And he's applied his criminology degree to analyzing code bases. One of the metrics he likes to work with, and he's developed a tool to do this, is temporal coupling. Temporal coupling means what parts of your code tend to change at the same time other parts tend to change. If they tend to change at the same time, then probably there's a coupling there, even if it doesn't show up in the structural analysis of the product. And he has heat maps and all those kinds of things, and he tells you how you can use this productively. It's absolutely fascinating. So if you have a code base and you're interested in metrics, I would say get that book, and you're going to get someone who's really thoughtful, not just a bean counter. That's one thing. I also recommend another book by Rob called Measuring and Managing Performance in Organizations, where he talks about how every measurement-based management system becomes a system for manipulating the managers who are using it. Because unlike the speedometer in your car, which has no self-consciousness, people have self-consciousness when they know you're looking at something, and they just like, if your car was sensitive about the speed limit, but it liked to go fast, it would like bend that needle a little bit when it knows you're looking at it. And unfortunately, humans do exactly the same kind of thing. Yes. Yeah, if you're right, or less of it, depending on what the valence is. Are you trying to measure? That goes along with a principle I noticed once, that anything that's bad, there's always too much of it, but anything that's good, there's never enough of it. So I caught myself thinking, I think I was 10 years old once. I said, what if dead leaves were worth $1 million each? Then I realized, then I would be looking around saying, I don't have enough dead leaves. Why don't I have more dead leaves? That's probably what I would say if they were worth $10 million each. I want to be waist deep in them, and I'm not. They're just a few around my feet. That's not good enough. So I think that's somehow related. If you want it, then there's not enough of it. If you don't want it, there's always too much of it. And then people try to start telling lies to each other. And I've seen this. I mean, I guess I was naive before when I was younger, but I saw, Hewlett-Packard, famous for doing various metrics and processes based on metrics. I saw a team in Hewlett-Packard in Boise that just invented a bunch of bug metrics and just sent them just completely fake to a process group in Palo Alto because they resented what the process group wanted. So they were just feeding them nonsense. And I'm like, really? I mean, this isn't even close to the truth. Yeah, who cares what they think? Like, they want metrics, and they can shut up. You know, screw them. Okay, but that's the kind of thing that is so strange about the metrics mentality that a lot of management people have. They somehow think they're controlling things with their metrics. They're not controlling anything, or they're often not controlling anything. Yeah, false. Goal displacement is also another common idea. There's a goal, and then you have this metric, and then the metric then becomes the goal. So I find that to help get over that pathology, instead of measurement, let's talk about assessment. And instead of numbers, let's talk about evidence. And now, you know what? Numbers are a kind of evidence, and measurement is part of assessment. So I'm not denying measurement. I'm just broadening our horizons a little bit. And I'm saying that we can talk to each other and get data about how things are going. Let's use color-coded charts. I like to use status reports that use color codes. Red means I'm worried about this. Management needs to react to it. When I put red on my report, that's what I'm saying. Danger. Amber means there's controversy. Some people think it's bad. Some people think it's good. Yellow. And green, everyone thinks it's okay. So then management can just look at that. The numbers aren't telling them what to do. It's these colors that are really guiding them, unless they don't trust their people at all, of course. But if they didn't trust their people, they wouldn't be able to trust the numbers either. So I could do a whole huge presentation on metrics. I have a whole day-long thing about metrics that I used to do. I have a lot of ideas about it. I'm a big fan of data science, though, done well. And not that I'm a professional at it, but I'm an enthusiastic amateur that has a whole bunch of, and I like to pet them and cuddle them. And I like to play with R and tools like that to create different kinds of visualizations. It's a powerful thing, and of course, there's a lot of money in it now. It's a big deal now if you do well in it. But I'll bet there's a lot of fakers in there too. It sounds like testing. It sounds like that's kind of it's Sturgeon's law, right? Have you heard of Sturgeon's law? Who knows Sturgeon's law? Only one in here? If you're a methodologist, then you have to know Sturgeon's law. You don't know Sturgeon's law, Juka? It was made for you. Sturgeon's law is 90% of anything is crap. That's Sturgeon's law. And that's really, that's a really helpful idea. It's like, it doesn't matter what you're talking about. 90% of it is not very good, and 10% of it is pretty good. And so that's true of data scientists, true of medical doctors, and it's true of all kinds of situations and things, because it turns out that being really, really good is really, really hard. And it also turns out that people will give you a lot of money even if you're not really, really good. You know, who knew? And so if I had any sense, I would stop worrying about being good and I would get rich. But I just can't bring myself to do that. So I'm going to go the way of certain philosophers before me, and I just realized that I wouldn't turn down a whole huge grant or a MacArthur Foundation genius grant. I wouldn't turn it down. I can be rich too. That's okay. I don't see any virtue in being poor. I just don't want to tell lies because it makes me physically sick to tell lies. And I start having violence fantasies. So my wife says, don't do that then. We don't want you to do that. My rule is, as soon as I have violence fantasies at work, I quit my job. I wish I could tell this to some of the other guys that we see in the news. How about quit your job, do something else? Huh? No? You gotta kill everyone? Okay, whatever. I wish you wouldn't. But I can't live that way. So I'm stuck doing this. But I love doing this. Thank you for letting me speak to you. Yes?
What are your thoughts on estimation?
I have a class on estimation. I have lots of ideas. One idea on estimation. The fundamental process of estimation is visualize the process as if it were a movie in your head, and then see how long it takes. And that's the estimate. That's how I estimate how long it's going to take me to get home. I visualize getting home. I have to go to the airport, and then I'm going to have to stay at this hotel, and then I'm going to have to do that, and then I'm going to miss that flight. And then I'm going to, okay, so it's going to be, we do estimates like this all the time. Like, how long is it going to take to make pancakes? Well, I'm going to have to get the pots out. I'm going to have to find the spatula. I'll probably have to buy the spatula. I mean, it would take me a couple hours. Here's a corollary to that. The corollary is, if you try to visualize a process and you can't do it, that means you shouldn't be making an estimate. That's the important part of that principle. And so many times I try to visualize something and I go, uh-oh, I just realized I have no idea how that's going to work. I don't know who's going to be where, building going to be in, what equipment we're going to use. I don't know anything about it. I'm not giving an estimate for this. I'm going to say I don't know enough about this to give an estimate. Now, you can visualize something and get it wrong, but that's a nice little heuristic, because if you can't visualize it, do not estimate it. But I also have a lot to say about estimation. I will send you my slides about estimation if you're interested. It's called it's about test estimation. So it's called a truthful approach to test estimation, or something like that. I have a little estimation poster that elements of estimation on it. So I wish I was asked more about that, because I do have a lot to say about it. All right, I guess my time's up. I thank you very much for your patience, and I'm going back over this. And I'm thinking I was pretty irritable in the first 10 minutes. So I hope you forgive me for that. I got a lot on my mind, but I thank you.
Thanks for coming, everybody. We'll have our April meeting announcements probably in a couple of weeks. So take some pizza, help.